Our next speaker is Keith Lackinen from the town of Fort Myers Beach on adaptive stewardship and policy on Fort Myers Beach, beach raking, and beach nesting birds. Doesn't sound like they coexist very well.
Thank you. Actually, maybe I can change your mind that they actually can coexist very well. And I realized in Alaska I stayed in between you guys in happy hour, so I'm trying to make this more fun. Keith Lackinen, the Environmental Sciences Coordinator for the town of Fort Myers Beach, and the biologist there. I want to talk about beach nesting birds on Estuary Island, how we survey and work protection efforts for them. Coastal change on Estuary Island, which really drives a lot of the habitat management of these species, regulatory framework, which we have to work within, partnerships in vegetation management, and some management implications of this project. So beach nesting birds fall into two general categories: colonial and solitary nesters. Colonial nesters are seabirds. This is going to be gulls, terns, and skimmers. Think webbed feet, think floating on the water. Solitary birds are going to be shorebirds. These are small birds that are going to run along the shore and beach nest on their own. These are plovers, oyster catchers, and willets. On Fort Myers Beach, we have two main species of beach nesting birds. These are snowy plovers and least terns. The least tern colony on Fort Myers Beach can be the biggest in the state of Florida, and actually a few years ago it was, and usually ranks in the top 3 every year, only usually behind Three River Bar. We do have Wilson's plovers, which nest on Fort Myers Beach. However, they're sort of secretive nesters and nest in dunes, so it's a little bit harder to detect their nesting effort. We also have had one American oyster catcher pair, which has nested the past 2 years, although unsuccessfully. So snowy plovers are listed by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission as a threatened species. There's only 450 breeding adults in the entire state of Florida, and decline is projected. They occur in less than 10 locations around the state of Florida, including Fort Myers Beach, and their habitat quality is declining. Least terns are also listed as threatened by the state of Florida. 80% of them actually nest on rooftop towns due to continued decline in their preferred beach nesting habitat. Currently, least terns are looking at a pretty bleak road with a 100% chance of extinction in 100 years if current productivity rates continue. Beach nesting birds have a couple traits that are very important for our purposes. One, they nest on Florida's most popular vacation habitat. They nest directly in the sand on a small scrape that the birds actually dig with their legs. Least terns and snowy plovers actually have a preference for non-vegetated beach with minimal slope. This is so they can see predators coming from a long ways off. The eggs and chicks are very cryptic and camouflage with the sand to hide them. And they defend their chicks and nests by distraction and defense. And I'll go into that a little bit more. Both of these species are actually very good parents. These scrapes are really small. They're about the size of a golf ball, and they're between half an inch and maybe 2 inches deep, a real deep one. And that's actually where they're laying their eggs, right on the beach sand. So the cryptic coloration is their primary defense. Most people are going to walk by this and not see much, but if you take a closer look, you're going to see a gorgeous male snowy plover in his breeding plumage and the egg right there on the sand. So this cryptic camouflage is really important to them as adults and eggs, and as well as chicks. The chicks, when they're born, they have this very cryptic downy feathers, which help them camouflage into the sand and helps them hide from predators. A few years ago, we had a washover in our least tern colony, and I was taking a look at the rack line. And so I started taking a closer look, and I found this 2-day-old least tern chick who was actually a real tough survivor. He was blended in right there real well. I almost stepped on this poor bird there, but he actually was able to survive. Terns are very aggressive, defensive nesters. They will dive on you, and they will defecate on all interlopers. If you've never been dive bombed by an 1.5 ounce bird, you realize how intimidating it can actually be. Plovers, however, since they're solitary nesters, actually will do the opposite and actually feign an injury to pull you away. On the right there, we have a Wilson's plover, and the other side is a snowy plover. These are both birds that I was actually able to find their nest because they feigned an injury, and I was actually able to backtrack once you find the nest. Some really important threats to beach nesting birds: development, loss of habitat, everything in the state of Florida. You can just check that off. Storm events, storm surge is a big deal for these birds. Tropical Storm Debbie, we lost over 160 nests and dozens and dozens of chicks all around during the storm surge in 2012. Climate change, especially sea level rise, this is going to be one of those chronic stressors which is going to have a lot of impact on these species. But the big two for us are disturbance and predators. Disturbance is any activity that's going to cause these birds to change their behavior. Fly, run, vocalize, run away. It actually causes the death of the eggs and young due to exposure. Most birds are actually sitting on an egg to keep them warm. Not on the Florida beach though. Those sand temperatures are over 100 degrees. And if the birds are disturbed, worrying about you, those eggs and chick will actually cook. And there's also increased nest predation and increased energy expenditure. If the birds are worrying about you, they're not focusing their time and effort on breeding. This is what disturbance looks like. So remember, please keep your dogs on a leash, and if these are your kids, maybe you need a leash for the kids too. These predators can be real problems with disturbance because they really key on it and they really look forward to it. There's some eastern and snowy plover colonies in Florida where fish crows have become really dangerous predators who've taken out all the eggs and chicks. We have a severe problem with gulls and especially ghost crabs. Ghost crabs will walk into a colony and actually will grab a chick and actually drag it away and eat it. This time of year we spend a lot of time looking for bird eggs. So we partnered with the FWC to monitor the beach, observe behavior, and GPS scrapes. This time of year, with the weather, territories are in flux every day and actually will move around quite a bit, so we have to really focus on a good survey. We find the snowy plover nest, we nest them with a buffer so we can reduce that disturbance, and we post least term nests colonially until all the colonies merge and we have one giant colony. And we walk these transects 7 days a week this time of year, doing everything we can looking for bird behavior, looking for any bird sign. We can also sort of use traffic patterns of snowy plovers to get us back to a nest. Actually, we spend a lot of time following around with bird tracks, and actually that can get you back to a nest. And since we're close to happy hour, I can show you some snowy plover behavior. This is actually pretty much going to result in an egg. So we know when we're seeing this on the beach that, and actually I have a video of this too, but that's another story. We know we're seeing this on the beach that they are right on a scrape, and there's going to be an egg soon in these birds' future, anywhere from 14 days to maybe 4 weeks. The scrapes are real small, and they're real hard, they're really easy to miss, so you have to really pay attention. So this is what we're looking for. We're GPSing each one of these and revisiting them every day to make sure they don't have an egg in them. Here's a freshly laid snowy plover egg, and you can see how that cryptic camouflage really works, blends in with everything on the beach. Here's a snowy plover that's actually on a nest. And even when they're sitting on a nest, they're very hard to see. They're called snowy, not because they're in the snow, because they're snowy white. And the birds are going to nest wherever the heck they want to nest. These guys nested in the middle of a volleyball court. This was not a popular nest, as you can imagine. All the volleyball games had to cease for a while. So Fort Myers Beach is 9 mile long, very island. It's a double crescent that actually has a lot of dynamics that occur, especially on the south end. So go back in time to the south end and focusing on 2 areas. 1, the critical wildlife area up here, and 2, the southern end. And watch how the sand moves over time. 2004, 2007, 2010, and 2012, and you can see the mangroves are now totally exposed, and the inlet is actually migrated all the way to the north. And we'll take a closer look here. And actually, we have some coastal consultants actually have determined that we have 30-foot-a-year erosion rates in this area, and over 30-foot-a-year accretion rates down this area. The dominant sediment transport is to the south, so as the sand erodes from here, it's moving to the south end. This is Carlos Point. This is the area we're talking about for this discussion. In 1998, there was no beach. The seawalls were keeping these places intact, and it was actually designated for a state immersion project. It was actually designated as critically eroded. Then 2005, and then 2008 is when I started with the town, 2011, and finally 2013. A couple things to note. 1, how incredibly wide this beach is. This is perfect for lease terns that have access to a lot of fish here in Big Carlos Pass. And two, beach raking has totally prevent any vegetation from growing. You can actually see the transect the beach raker grows not to go into the critical wildlife area. If there hadn't been beach raking, the problem would look mixed like that in here. So this is what people on Florence Beach culturally expect. Beautiful, flat, and raked beach. Sterile, no vegetation. This is what they love. To get there, you have to drive a tractor, you have to drag some pines on the beach, and you have to drag some forests. If you're a beach nesting bird, obviously this could be a concern. Beach raking can impact beach nesting birds in a couple obvious ways, crushing eggs and chicks and increasing disturbance. You can imagine a tractor driving by a least tern colony is going to cause a lot of disturbance. However, we do have some really important regulations for beach nesting birds. The Federal Migratory Bird Treaty Act and the State Listed Species Act, these both prevent take. If you get with listed species, you're familiar with this. And it's particularly the state rule now does not allow take possession of birds, of nests, or their eggs. So even though it's environmentally bad, the town allows it in our land development code, and the DEP allows it and regulates for it. However, possession of a permit for beach raking from DEP does not exempt you from the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and any raking that results in take are violations of 68 AFAC and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So our management challenge are we have large amounts of preferred nesting habitat occur on private property. Property owners' cooperation is needed for shorebird posting. This is a private property rights issue. In America in 2014, this is a big deal, so you really have to work hand in hand with these property owners. Once the raking ceases, vegetation recruits, and the DEP permits requiring for vegetation removal on beaches, and actually they required mitigation. Initially, they wouldn't even issue us a permit the first year to remove the vegetation. Then they came back and said you need mitigation, and we eventually worked with them. Because what we need to recognize that beach raking is functioning as a habitat management technique, and I'll go into that a little bit more in a minute. Recognize nesting season and snowbird season. When the snowbirds are here, nobody's on the beaches. There's lots of people on the beaches, no birds. Once the people leave is when the birds start nesting. And allow partners to post the area. So, after very intense, and sometimes that palette doesn't quite capture the word intense, negotiations between the town, DEP, and private property owners, strong support by the Audubon and ABM, DEP issued an area wide permit. Say, so it's permit. Well, the funny part is that section of statute, they didn't even know was there. They didn't even know what it was. Nobody had ever used it before. This is the first time they've ever been able to use it. It authorized vegetation removal after bird season with no mitigation requirement, and it allowed the staff to go back and gain permission to post after more dramatics with the property owners. So early in the season, you can see this is freshly raked beach. This is our first snowy clover nest from a few years ago, and there's absolutely no vegetation around that beach. As the season progresses, this is by the time the lease terms are shown up, and you can see the vegetation is recruiting. However, you see this little tiny pathway in the middle. That's just a little bit of foot traffic from people coming out to the beach. So all it takes is a little bit of effort out there, and the vegetation won't grow. By the end of the season, you have a lot of vegetation. The property owners are really upset at this time of year because it looks like I've heard every joke from golf course to cattle field. And actually, a couple of years ago, one of my condo board members was very upset at the condition of the beach, and she had one of her owners actually decided that she was going to put some, pixel the paper and actually show me what she thought of the beach. And this is what she sent me. I think those are cowbirds. So 17 acres and growing. We get out there every year, we remove the vegetation, and you can see from a helicopter how the scale of the vegetation removal. You're only pulling about 6 or 7 foot wide path every time. You cannot do a project without this, without partnerships, especially the two condos, Carlos Point and Castle Beach. They have allowed us to continue to work with them. Florida Shorebird Association, the town FWC, and DEP. One of our most important partners is Audubon Florida Shorebird Stewards. A few years ago, Brad Cornell approached me and says, how can we help you out? He says, we have some volunteers on the beach. And we do, the volunteers actually provide visitors information information about what's going on with the birds. They increase outreach, and they have an immediate personal effect on people. It's not the government telling you what you can and can't do. It's somebody on the beach friendly with a scope who's showing you pictures of birds. It reduces conflict and it leverages management efforts. These people work weekends. I can leave on a Friday and I come back Monday, and I know the company's going to be in good hands all weekend. The stewards really get out there, and I want to, in the upper left there, that's Roxy Barber. She's been our volunteer manager out there for several years, and you can see what they do. They have those optics. They can actually show people, pictures of cute and fuzzy. And threats of legal action, everything else doesn't impact anyone, but I'll tell you what, cute and fuzzy can really sell a project, so it's really important to us. Bird stewards, in addition, can have a big impact in actually protecting the birds out there. Once birds start fledging, you have little chicks all over out at the beach, so you can actually prevent tragedies from happening, because that cryptic coloration again is something that causes them to get stepped on. So a few management implications. One is that raking can be done near beach nesting birds, but it can be done carefully. We have to intensively monitor the effort to make sure there's no take. This is in the raker's interest, this is in our interest, they continue to rake, and allows vegetation control to continue. Beach vegetation birds. Beach nesting birds nest on naturally disturbed habitat. Beaches are dynamic systems, they're always changing. Snowy plovers have actually shown a pretty good linkage to nesting after tropical cyclones due to overwash. This is after vegetation is removed, you have a minimal slope with low vegetation. Snowy plovers have higher nesting success in least-turn colonies. I like it too, having some fighter cover, over your ground troops, because you've got these least-turns that are keeping predators out there. It's going to keep those little solitary nesters safer. And they naturally nest in areas with low vegetation. So disturbance and loss of habitat continuing to depress beach nesting bird numbers in Florida. And the really interesting thing is, due to our success here at Carlos Point, FWC is looking at that as a pilot project to potentially implement this in other areas around the state of Florida to facilitate beach nesting bird nesting success. However, huge caveat, careful selection of nest sites is critical, so you're not going to impact the beach system. We can see that we have to be very cautious with choosing which sites, and FWC is looking at that now. So take-home points, engage all your stakeholders. Your agencies, NGOs, property owners understand their viewpoints. You're not going to agree with them, they're not going to agree with you, but in order for you to reach an agreement, you at least have to understand what they're saying. Various solutions are just waiting to be found. Sometimes it just takes digging into the rules, looking at them a different way. All of us work under regulations. So take a deeper look at those regulations. You might find a gem in there that can help you solve the problem. Anthropogenic disturbances can simulate natural processes. That's what's going on with the beach raking here, and that's why FWC is going to work with that in other areas. And you can treat volunteers as valued partners, involve them more. They actually are not out there just smiling and handing out brochures. They are actively involved in the conservation of these species. I just want to thank the condo boards, Castle Beach and Carlos Point, Town Council for Orange Beach, DEP, FWC, Audubon, and ABM, and especially the volunteers. So, thank you.
Questions?
Thank you. Thanks for that presentation. A question on Carlos Point. If they do dredge the Carlos Pass, will that have an impact on that point? Do you know?
The proposed dredging of Big Carlos Pass, we're actually looking at it out of the F-Shoal complex. There's a couple answers to that. One is that state statute may determine you cannot have a negative impact on downstream beaches, so that's where the sediment may go. However, I intend to push that maybe we get some of that sediment placed either onshore or nearshore in the critical walleye areas